And there is a moment in every life when silence becomes louder than words, when the ticking of the clock turns into a question, not about time, but about meaning, and you find yourself wondering if the path you have taken is truly yours, or a borrowed echo from the voices that surrounded you for so long. And you breathe, and you realize that you have been moving for years, but not always living. You have been chasing and running and building and breaking, yet somewhere deep inside there was a whisper that kept asking, is this what you really wanted? And perhaps you never answered, because the world is full of noise, and the noise feels safer than the silence, because silence forces you to listen. Unlistening forces you to face yourself, and in that quiet you find the truth. Not a grand revelation, not a lightning strike, but a soft unfolding like dawn, spreading across a cold horizon. And you realize that the person you have been is not fixed. It is not trapped. It is fluid. It is waiting. It is becoming. And there is beauty in that, because all the pain, all the failures, all the moments you thought you were lost were not endings. They were beginnings disguised as lessons. They were life asking you to pause, to feel, to understand that every broken piece was shaping you into someone new, someone more aware, someone alive. And maybe you remember the times you stood in the rain, thinking that the world was washing away everything you built. And yet now you understand that the rain was cleansing, not destroying, that the tears you hid were rivers leading you back to yourself, that the mistakes you feared were actually teachers in disguise. And you smile softly, because now you know that there is no wasted day, no wasted love, no wasted struggle. There is only experience, and the wisdom it leaves behind. And the fire within you, that quiet, persistent flame, it never went out, even when you felt hollow, even when your dreams seemed buried. It was still that whispering, rise again, rise again, rise again. And maybe that is what life truly is, not the constant arrival at destinations, but the endless rising, the gentle defiance against despair, the decision to keep walking even when the road disappears. And you start to see that growth is not loud. It is not about shouting your success to the sky. It is the small acts of courage you perform when no one sees. It is the forgiveness you give to yourself for the years you were unkind. It is the patience you offer to the parts of you still learning how to heal. It is the way you keep showing up every morning, even when the weight of uncertainty sits heavy on your chest. It is in the breath you take before you speak, the kindness you give before you are asked, and the love you share even when it scares you. And somewhere along the way you understand that happiness was never meant to be a destination. It was meant to be a companion. It walks beside you quietly, sometimes unnoticed, yet always present, in the glimmer of sunlight on your skin, in the laughter of a stranger, in the scent of rain on the pavement, in the memory of someone you once loved deeply and lost, and in that last still found gratitude, because love in any form is proof that you have lived. And life is not about perfection. It is about participation. It is about showing up in your own story and saying, I am here even when I do not have the answers, even when I am afraid, even when I am tired. Because that is bravery, not the absence of fear, but the will to keep moving through it. And you begin to trust the process. Not the kind of trust that demands proof, but the kind that believes even in uncertainty that maybe the things falling apart are making space for things that truly belong. And you realize that you do not need to rush anymore, that your worth is not measured by how fast you reach your goals or how loudly the world applauds you. Your worth has always been there, in the quiet moments when you chose compassion over pride, when you chose growth over comfort, when you stood alone and did not abandon yourself. Those were the moments that defined you, not the trophies, not the titles, not the validation, but the integrity of your own heart. And there is peace in understanding that everything has its time, that not all doors are meant to open, that not all people are meant to stay, that sometimes the goodbye you feared is the beginning of your freedom, that Sometimes the loss is the lesson, and sometimes the waiting is the preparation for something you cannot yet imagine. And you look back and see that the storms you once cursed were guiding winds, that the pain you resented was sculpting your strength, that the loneliness you thought would break you was in truth a teacher showing you that your own company was enough, that you could build from the inside, that you could rise not because someone lifted you, but because something within you refused to fall. And so you begin again with gentleness, not the desperate rush of starting over, but the quiet acceptance of where you are. You begin again not because you failed, but because you have grown, and growth is a kind of rebirth each day, an invitation to become more authentic, more whole, more real. And maybe that is all we ever need to do, to keep returning to ourselves, to keep remembering that we are enough, as we are in this moment, Eva, when we are unfinished, even when we are uncertain, even when we are still healing. And you start to love the process, the journey, the unfolding, not because it is easy, but because it is yours. You stop comparing your timeline to others, because you see that flowers do not bloom in competition, they bloom in their own rhythm. And so will you. You learn that there is power in stillness, that rest is not laziness, that saying no is self-respect, that boundaries are not walls but bridges to self-worth, and that peace is not found outside but cultivated within. And every morning becomes a quiet revolution when you open your eyes and choose to try again, when you choose to believe that today can hold something beautiful. Even if yesterday was heavy, you will learn to find joy in simplicity, in the taste of coffee, in the warmth of sunlight, in the sound of your own breathing, reminding you that you are alive, and being alive is enough. And sometimes you will stumble, you will fall back into old habits, you will doubt yourself again. And that is okay, because healing is not linear, and growth is not a straight line. It is messy, it is circular, it is filled with pauses and returns and moments of forgetting and remembering again, but through it all, you remain the constant, the observer, the soul, learning how to live and love in a world that is always changing. And when you finally forgive yourself, you realize how heavy the burden of guilt truly was. You feel lighter, not because life became easier, but because you stopped fighting the past. You accepted it, you made peace with it, and you understood that the version of you who made those mistakes did so with the awareness they had then, and that compassion becomes your freedom. And you no longer chase validation, you no longer need to prove your worth to anyone, because you know, it in your bones now, that you were never lacking, that your light was simply dimmed by the noise of others, that you are not too late, not too broken, not too far gone. You are simply in the middle of becoming, and becoming takes time. And you begin to see others with softer eyes too. Understand that everyone is carrying something unseen, that kindness is not weakness, that empathy is not naivety, that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is to remain gentle in a world that has forgotten how to listen. And when you live like that, when you let compassion guide you, you find that life begins to return its grace in unexpected ways. And love becomes less about possession and more about connection, less about need and more about understanding. And you stop asking who will complete you and start asking who will grow with you, who will walk beside you, not to fill your emptiness, but to share your fullness. And when you love like that, it no longer hurts the same, because it is rooted in freedom, not fear. And when the nights get long and the doubts return, you remember that the stars are only visible in darkness. That light has meaning because of shadow, and so does joy because of pain. And you breathe and remind yourself that even in uncertainty, you are still moving forward, even when you cannot see the destination, and that faith is not knowing where the road leads, but walk in it anyway. And someday you will look back, not with regret, but with gratitude. You will see that every detour was divine, that every delay was protection, that every heartbreak was redirection. That everything truly did happen for you, not to you. And that realization will bring tears, not of sadness, but of relief, because you will finally understand that life was never trying to hurt you, it was always trying to wake you. And in that awakening you find yourself again, not as the person you once were, but as the person you were meant to become. And you realize that peace was never about having everything figured out, but about trusting that you can handle whatever comes next. That no matter the storm, you have the fire, the quiet fire within, and that fire will guide you home again and again and again. And in that knowing, you smile softly at the universe and whisper, "Thank you."